Strap into your seats and get ready. It's time for the Mortarpod.
Hey everybody, Alex Stephenson from SeemsGoodMagic.com here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod, your weekly video podcast for completely custom Magic the Gathering sets. This week we're doing a TV show, considered one of the greatest TV shows of all time, which is a pretty bold statement, but I did enjoy it and I would have to agree. It is certainly one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. There's going to be some spoilers in this episode, so if you haven't watched the series, it's still relatively fresh, so I understand if you were going to get around to see it, then maybe you don't want to watch this episode, because I will be giving some spoilers, and it's a very, very awesome show, so I wouldn't want to spoil anything for you. But if you've already seen Breaking Bad, which is this week's episode, I think you're really going to enjoy the subtleties of this set. So I'm just going to break down what Breaking Bad is, just like in a vacuum what the show is. So you've got Walter White, played by Bryan Cranston, and the show is he's a chemistry teacher who ends up going to the doctor and finding out he's got terminal cancer, so he has no chance of survival. And what he's worried about is he's paying all this money for treatment, but he's not going to be able to leave any money to his family. And he actually has a young daughter on the way, and he has a son with a disability. So he's got some concerns and turns to making methamphetamines to help pay for his family after he's dead. So that, in a vacuum, is what Breaking Bad is. And I was late to the show. I got in around when they were starting to air season 4. So they had it on Netflix, and I started watching it, and it actually took me a while to get into it. The first couple seasons are very morbid, slow, depressing, in my opinion. I thought they were very depressing. So it was difficult for me to stick with it. But once you hit that season 3, that's where it really picks up, in my mind, where the show really starts to get really incredible, and you see the power in the writing. Not to say the first couple seasons aren't powerful writing, but you gotta work your way through some very depressing, unsettling things. So, yeah, if you can handle that, I definitely agree. This is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. So, let's get into the set here. So, of course, we've got Walter White, also known by his pseudonym Heisenberg, and played by Bryan Cranston, the amazing Bryan Cranston, who did an incredible job at this performance. I think at this point, Walter White must be considered one of the most amazing character arcs of any story of all time. Just an absolutely incredible story arc. The fact that it's like he starts the good guy, turns into the bad guy, like I've never seen a character arc like that before. It really was just such a complex character development. It was amazing. So let's get into his card here. Walter White, Heisenberg. He's 2 colorless, a blue and a black, for a 4/4 legendary human artificer creature. He has, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on Walter White, Heisenberg. He has terminal cancer, so he's slowly getting weaker. And then he has an activated ability of blue and tap for each -1/-1 counter on Walter White, Heisenberg, Cook. Now, Cook is the ability of this set. And Cook is referring to meth, of course, because that's what Walter White makes in the show. So Cook is put a colorless artifact token named Meth onto the battlefield with, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card, then discard a card. And you can see I made a Meth token, Meth artifact token card. So Walter White's, not only does he make meth, he happens to make the best meth that's ever existed. So his meth is a special kind of periwinkle blue color, or a light blue. I don't know, turquoise. Not turquoise, I don't know. It's a lightish blue color, but it definitely separates his meth from the rest of the packs, and the potency on his meth is, the highest that's ever been. So what's interesting about Walter is he starts to take pride in his meth. At first, he thinks I'm just making meth to pay for my family, but things start to change. He starts to take pride in his meth and you know, being at first kind of like a cowardly chemistry teacher, but suddenly having power in the drug trade, the illegal drug market, and being a feared man. It's a little bit too good for him to not care about. Moving on, we have Jesse Pinkman, and Jesse Pinkman is a former student of his, who actually is the one that gets him involved in the meth market. So Jesse Pinkman, also just a really awesome character arc as well, awesome supporting character role, and he has a very tumultuous relationship with seemingly everybody in the show. He's got addiction problems, he's got anger problems, all sorts of problems with the family. So very, very cool character. One colorless, a red and a white, 2/2, legendary human artificer creature as well. He's a rare. He has vigilance because he goes through some very difficult times, and he does stay vigilant through that. And he also has an activated ability of 2 colorless, a red and a white, tap. Put a +1/+1 counter on Jesse Pinkman, then cook. So he gets bigger, he makes meth. Very good. Exactly how his character turns out. He grows as he learns the meth trade. Next, we have Hank Schrader, drug agent. So this is Walter White's brother-in-law, and this character is very good too. You really do learn to love Hank. He's at first he comes off as a little bit abrasive and kind of condescending, but he is a really good guy, and Hank is a hard worker. So Hank Schrader, drug agent. 2 white for a 2/2 legendary human creature. He's a rare. And he has whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, put a +1/+1 counter on a Hank Schrader, drug agent. And then Hank Schrader, drug agent has Intimidate as long as it has a +1/+1 counter on it. So sort of the counter to cooking meth in this set. He grows bigger as you develop more meth because he's starting to get hot on your trail. And he has Intimidate because presumably he's got search warrants or to search and find the meth. So I'm pretty happy with how Hank turned out. Some of these cards are, you've watched a few of these. The difficulty in designing legends especially is you need a card that there's a good reason why you wouldn't have multiple on the board at the same time to make the legendary rule make sense. And that can be a difficult thing to balance sometimes. So like enter the battlefield effects with legends makes less sense, because if you have a legend that enters the battlefield and has an enter the battlefield effect, and then you play another legend that enters the battlefield and has the effect, it's not making sense with the legendary rule in my mind. So usually I like to make activated abilities or triggered abilities on legends, and it just makes more sense to me, but not necessarily into the battlefield abilities. Next, we have Tuco Salamanca, the Crazed, and Tuco is one of the first meth dealers you encounter in the show, and he is crazy. He is, as the name suggests, completely crazy. So he's dangerous. He kills his own people. He doesn't care about anything, seemingly. So he is what you'd expect of a crazy meth dealer. He is exactly that. So Tuco Salamanca the Crazed is 1 colorless, a black and a red for a 3/3 legendary human creature. He has sacrifice another creature. Tuco Salamanca the Crazed gets +1/+1 and gains Intimidate until end of turn. So this is, of course, referring to the scene where they're making a drug deal, and Tuco Salamanca just takes one of his guys, beats him barehanded to death for no other reason than the guy said something that Tuco didn't like. So that's what his activated ability is referring to, of course. And yes, Tuco, another little spoiler here, may or may not have an appearance in Better Call Saul, the spin-off series from Breaking Bad. And speaking of Better Call Saul, the next card we have is Saul Goodman, Attorney at Law, played by Bob Odenkirk. Really awesome performance. Such a good performance that he got his own spin-off series that's been wildly successful as well. So Vince Gilligan, the writer of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, really proving his ability here with just making some of the most popular TV shows that ever existed. So Saul Goodman, Attorney at Law, a blue and a black for a 1/2 rare human advisor creature. He has, at the beginning of your upkeep, pay 1 or sacrifice Saul Goodman, Attorney at Law. So you got to pay his lawyer fees, of course, right? And then he has 1 and a blue. Target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. So that's Saul Goodman using his attorney skills to keep you out of trouble. And then his other ability is 1 colorless, a blue and a black, tap, sacrifice another creature, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So this ability can be interpreted a few ways, but the way I saw it is if he's got a defendant that he's going to be unable to defend, he can kind of throw him to the wolves and maybe get a little bit of bargaining power in another case or with some evidence. That was what that ability is referring to, of course. Okay, next we have Mike Ehrmantraut, the Enforcer. So this is my favorite character in the series. Also may or may not make an appearance in Better Call Saul. Yeah, so I'm a big Mike Ehrmantraut fan. Former police officer turned drug trade enforcer, which means he comes along with big drug trades as sort of like the muscle protecting the dealer. And just a really awesome character, seemingly unkillable, very deadly, knows police tactics, just a really important resource to have if you're in the illegal drug trade. But he's not all bad. He's still got, some of his, he still has kindness with him. He just doesn't see the problem with making more money on the side for the drug trade. So he's, of course, raising a bunch of money for his granddaughter. So he has a noble cause, and ultimately he's a good guy. He's just involved with some sketchy business, of course. So Mike Ehrmantraut, the Enforcer, is 3 colorless, a white and a black. He's a human assassin creature, a 4/5. He has 2 activated abilities. His white one is a white and tap. Mike Ehrmantraut, the Enforcer, deals 1 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. And I know what you're thinking. It's like, wait, that's not very much damage. But his other activated ability that synergizes with it is 1 colorless and a black. Mike Ehrmantraut, the Enforcer, gains Death Touch until end of turn. So you give him Death Touch, and then he can kill any attacker or blocker. So I'm kind of happy how his abilities sort of came together. Plus, he's a relatively efficiently costed beater, a 5-mana 4/5. So pretty happy with his design as well. Next, we have Gustavo Fring, drug ringleader. So this is a guy that pops up in season 3, and he's just a very intelligent drug ringleader that owns a franchise of chicken restaurants, but is running a methamphetamines business at the same time, and sort of laundering the money through his fast food chain. So Gustavo Fring, drug ringleader, 3 colorless, a blue and a black for a 2/5 rare human creature. He has 2 activated abilities, 2 and a black, tap. Target opponent loses 1 life for each artifact you control. So as you build your warehouse of methamphetamines, Gustavo can make your opponent basically lose a bunch of life because of it. And his other one is a blue and a black, sacrifice another creature you control, and you can cook. So he gets to basically convert your creatures into artifacts and then make your opponent lose life because of it. I'm also pretty happy with his design as well. I think he can be like a one-man sort of destroy your opponent, and he's a pretty good blocker at the same time. So I think he would be definitely played in Limited and would be kind of a fun card to play in Limited. Next we have Coldblooded Killing. So you can see in this picture, early in Gustavo's drug career, he had a partner who ends up getting killed by none other than Hector Salamanca, I believe. And Cold-Blooded Killing is a black and a red. It's a sorcery, an uncommon. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less, then cook. So since you get an artifact out of this, that's basically like a loot effect. I wanted to limit a couple things. I didn't want it to be an instant speed removal, and I wanted it to be sort of limited in what level of creature you can kill. So I definitely wanted this cook thing to be present on quite a few cards, though. Next, we have Hector Salamanca, the Patriarch. So Hector Salamanca is a wheelchair-bound. You don't exactly know what disease he's got, but it's obviously some sort of neurological thing. He can't speak. He's got very limited mobility, but he's got a very powerful scene and finale involving Gustavo. Very powerful scene, very memorable. So he's 1 black for a 0/1 defender because he can't attack and he can only block. He does end up blocking in the show in a very memorable scene. But tap, he has tap, sacrifice Hector Salamanca the Patriarch, destroy target creature blocked by Hector Salamanca the Patriarch. That creature's controller loses 3 life. So kind of an unusual creature, but once again, I wanted to make the legendary rule have meaning with this card. So since he can destroy anything that he blocks, which is pretty impressive, and he makes them lose 3 life, I'd say that's a pretty good ability mashup for a 1-drop. And finally in the set, we have Ricin Sickness. So you can see in this picture Lydia, who's a character that comes up later in the series, of course, also involved in the drug trade. And Ricin Sickness. So you see Ricin, once again, it's another thing Walter White is basically uses as a means of assassination because he's a chemist, so he knows how to create Ricin. And Ricin Sickness is a 1 black mana aura enchantment, and at the beginning of enchanted creatures controller's upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on enchanted creature. So this card slowly kills your opponent's creatures, which I think makes it it's certainly a limited playable common, but kind of what you'd expect how Ricin would kill you. Very slow and painful death, as indicated by the show. So that's my little Breaking Bad custom set. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm pretty happy with how the cook keyword turned out. I hope you guys dug it as well and enjoyed Breaking Bad as much as I did. I've also watched the entire first season of Better Call Saul. I've very much been enjoying that show as well. So very cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll see you next week.